What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of MUT Tips. I'm your host, Sean Taylor from the Made Up Theater. And before we jump in, remember to like the video, comment with somebody you would like addressed in a future video, and as always, subscribe on YouTube to be informed of upcoming videos. Ring that bell. But without further ado, let's jump into today's topic, confusion in improv. Something that's fairly common in improv is that feeling of confusion that happens, not just with the characters, but also with the improvisers. You might have found yourself in this moment where you're just kind of looking to the players on stage and thinking, what the heck is going on? And it's something that can create a lot of anxiety in you as well as in your ensemble. And don't worry, it's happened to me too. I've been in a lot of long form narratives where the plot becomes so overwhelming that I'm like, what the heck is going on? And it kind of makes me not want to participate anymore. You know, I'm afraid to participate. I'm afraid of being wrong. And it comes from the confusion in my head. So let's jump into a few moments of confusion and just ways we can avoid them. The first thing I want to focus on that can lend itself to confusion in improv is questions. And just know this, I'm not against questions whatsoever. I talk about questions in MUT Tips episode 30 if you would like to learn more about that. But questions are fine because, hey, it gives someone the opportunity to improvise. You know, if someone comes up to me and asks me a question, I've been doing improv for a while, so I love to answer. But for beginning improvisers, they might default to asking questions right at the top of a scene. Questions like, who are you? Where are we? What are we doing? And those things we should try to answer ourselves within the first few lines. That's the base reality, the foundation of the scene. So try to see if you can avoid questions that are just left very open, you know? Maybe give some information with a question that you ask your scene partner. So instead of saying, who are you? You might say, are you Pete Johnson from gym class? And that gives your partner something to become, right? Because most likely they'll say yes. And I would encourage, say yes to a question like that so you can just jump into knowing. Otherwise, if you say no, it'll just lead to more confusion. And, you know, where are we? You know, it might be something along the lines of, oh man, we've been in this dark alley for a long time. This isn't the Marriott. Where are we? You know, I asked where are we, but I gave details about where we are and where we're supposed to be, and thus I kind of helped create some emotion, you know, tension in this scene. So see if with your questions at the top of a scene especially, try to give information rather than leave it in the open, leave it in the void. Let's take our scenes, especially at the beginning, out of the void and into the knowing. Another type of confusion that happens right at the top of a scene is when you're thrown kind of a curveball and it's hard to let go of an idea, okay? Sometimes you go on scene and you have an idea of where to start. Like maybe you go on stage and you start typing at a laptop or something, and then your scene partner sees that but comes in and says, oh, that's a wonderful sonata, Jerry. I think you're gonna do well at the recital tonight. And now in your head, you're like, oh my God, I was at a laptop. I thought maybe I was at an office, but now I'm being given a different role, a different activity. And at that point, you gotta let go of the original idea and jump onto the same page as your scene partner. You know, and be Jerry going to the recital that night. That's great. That's a great starting off, and you can't combat it, okay? And you'll be thrown curveballs sometimes. Like a scene partner will call what you're doing something different because they see it differently, like especially object work. And yeah, you'll have that confusion moment, like, I thought I was doing this, but now I'm doing that. And whatever, drop your idea and just do that and just go past it, okay? Never get stuck in your head that it's gonna go this way, you know? Improv is never gonna go the way you think it's gonna go, okay? Because it's not a solo project, it is an ensemble project. So be prepared to let go of your idea. If you come into a scene as Santa Claus, ho ho ho, and you walk in like this, and then your scene partner calls you Little Jimmy from down the block before you get to say a word, well, at this point, you're Little Jimmy from down the block. You can still be this character and walk this way. You don't have to change your physicality. But hey, that's the idea now, because once it's said, it's true. Now let's talk about confused as a character trait, you know? This I see a lot of improvisers do as well, where they'll come out and be a character who has no idea what they're doing, you know? There might be, a competition for making a food, like a great British baking show type scene, and there's a character who's like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing, you know? And that can be difficult because that type of confusion isn't coming from an emotional place, you know? Not really. And I encourage you, put emotion in your confusion. okay? Rather than like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, that's blank. But if you treat confusion maybe with curiosity, right? Like maybe you're curious to learn something, like you've just discovered an alien species in a scene, and like you're so curious and intrigued to find out what this is. You don't know what it is, but you want to find out, and that'll help drive the scene forward. Or maybe the other way around. Maybe instead of just being confused, maybe you're frustrated, Like when I'm confused sometimes, I get frustrated that I can't do this, or I don't know what I'm doing. God, which leads to disappointment too. And those are stronger character traits than just, I don't know what I'm doing. And now, I talked about this at the beginning of the video, I've been confused before in long form narratives, when like we're trying to create a story out of nothing, and we make the plot super complicated and just challenging for us that, to me, sometimes I could just get lost and not know where the flip we are on the story. It happens a lot, and it's normal. So, when that happens, what you need to do is screw the plot. Don't focus on the plot and focus on the relationship. Because if you're too focused on the plot, you're disconnected from your scene partner. All you're doing is serving the plot or just serving the scene. Serve yourselves, serve your scene partner. That's the person who matters the most. If you're ever in a scene where it feels kind of like you're lost and, it's just like craziness is happening, like maybe there's a scientist who's a father and trying to get his son involved with the business, and they're like, the whole plot is around like, saving the planet from a virus, and they had to go back in time to like correct something and come back to the present to make sure it got corrected, but then other things happen, and then there's mutants that suddenly came into the story, and now there's a Greek god who somehow is in the story too. It's just all this plot shit going on. But maybe during that scene, the son looks in the father and says, "Why did you make me this? I didn't want to be a scientist," At that point, the plot is no longer relevant. We're focusing now on this connection between these two characters, the scientist and the scientist's son. And let's have an emotional scene with these two characters and just screw that plot, okay? Anytime you're overcome with confusion in a story or a scene, bring it back to the relationship. That's the best cure, okay? Forget the plot and just make a confession maybe about how you feel about the other person, or just say how you feel about the other person. Maybe in silence, Keep it simple, okay? Anytime it's become confusing and you're lost, go back to the basics. Listen to each other. Focus on the relationship. Make it simple, because it's gotten too complicated, but you can control it. Just bring it back to a focal point between the two characters on stage. And that concludes this episode of MUT Tips, everybody. Thank you so much for checking it out. Remember, in improv, choose to know. Choose to know. But thank you so much. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. We're trying to release more videos, and we're trying to do live streams as well. So ring that bell, and you'll be notified when we are online. Also, visit madeuptheater.com for information about our online shows and online classes. We got a few new ones at madeuptheater.com. We got an improv wrestling one coming out that I'm going to teach. I'm really excited about that. We got an online meeting format hosted by a guest teacher from Empire Improv, Michael Lewis. And we have a long-form improv narrative class coming up in April as well. Madeuptheater.com for more info. Thank you so much, everybody. I'll see you next time for another episode of MUT Tips. Bye.